If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnette Heintze.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnette Heintze. Thank you for joining. Today, our guest is Dr. Tiffany Slater. She's the CEO of HR TailorMade. Tiffany has 25 years of experience in HR, having worked her way from intern up to the highest level in public education. She has also worked in HR in the highly regulated gaming industry. Tiffany, I'm so glad you could meet me today and join for a conversation. And I'm really interested in understanding the topic of politics in the workplace. I know that's a topic that's kind of difficult for a lot of folks to have. I know it's sensitive for sure, but it's something that we all have to keep in mind and have to deal with. And I'm sure you probably have some good recommendations. But before we jump into that, would you mind sharing more about your career and what your company, HR TailorMade, does specifically?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. So my career has been eventful in a good way. I've had the opportunity of working in several different industries and for several different organizations. So that has definitely helped me shape as an HR professional and understand what could be translated from one organization to another and what questions I need to ask when working within a new organization. So that's been a lot of fun and helpful. The other thing that's really cool about my background is I took something from each organization with me, as many of us do. But it's definitely helped me professionally and personally. So that's definitely a plus, I would say. And as far as HR TailorMade, we are the fractional HR team that every small business needs, right? We are there to support small businesses and nonprofit organizations with their administrative HR needs. And all of our work is guided by the culture that the organization is wanting to establish.
Yep. You know, what you're doing at HR TailorMade is so much a sought after service, because I know in the first couple of companies I established and built over the years, I used organizations just like yours. I wish I'd have known you at the time. Yeah. But it's certainly an area of demand. So as we get into our conversation, I know one of the areas that you focus on is employee relations, and you help companies have tough conversations internally. And people typically say to leave through, that subject on politics, you're supposed to leave those at the door. But you published a great article on LinkedIn called Addressing Politics in the Workplace. What prompted you to speak out on that? And are you seeing this come up more often now?
Well, a lot of times I write articles or blog posts as a result of a question that I get from a client or just someone who has an HR question or something that popped in my mind that said, you know what? I don't think I've seen anything about that. I think we need to make sure that people know about it. So that's what prompted me to do it. And I honestly haven't seen a lot of it. However, the difference between the people that I work with a lot of times and what we see in corporate America is that the organizations that we serve truly have great workplace cultures. So a lot of these issues don't come up a lot of times. But in this particular case, it did.
Yeah.
And so that's what prompted me to write that article.
Yeah. As we look across our nation today, we've got individuals on the left, individuals on the right. We've got moderates in the middle, and those oftentimes drive conversations at the water cooler. And your article that you published recently has some really good points. And would you? We're going to put a link in the show notes to that article, but you covered a couple of areas, and I'd like for you to address each topic if you wouldn't mind. So you first talk about set firm limits. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, with any policy that we have in our organization, we have to be very clear, like, what are the boundaries? Because we have some people that are line walkers or envelope pushers, right? That's just who they are. I have a kid that is like that. So, we are born into the world that way. So we have to be very clear about what the limits are. So when we say don't talk about politics in the workplace, does that mean I can't wear a hat that demonstrates, what political figure I support or what party I support? Does it mean that I can't have a screen on my computer, a screensaver that recognizes or acknowledges who I support? What exactly does that mean? So be very clear and cover your bases when it comes to setting your limits for your team members around politics.
Yeah. So would you take that to the point where your HR teams actually have those limits kind of firmly established and published?
I definitely would. So if your organization chooses to go down that route, which is a whole nother conversation, if you choose to go down that route, then go all the way, because there is no half stepping with this conversation. Go all the way and make it public. I would even have a conversation with the team to say, hey, let's talk about this. And here is why we are putting this in place. We're putting this in place because we want our workspace to be free of distractions. We want our workspace to be a space where everybody feels comfortable, safe, and heard. And so it doesn't matter who you support. We just want to make sure that we are clear on what happens here in our workspace.
Yep. So another area that you went into was model respectful behavior. Why don't you share a little bit of your thoughts on that?
Yeah. And, Arnette, that should be like not rocket science, right?
Right.
Model respectful behavior. It simply means that as leaders of an organization, we have to show people what respectful conversation looks like. So if we disagree on something, then as a leader, I need to be demonstrating what that should look like. So if I don't agree with what you're saying, either I can respectfully decline to continue with this conversation, or I can say, you know what, we're both entitled to our opinion and I still respect you. And you walk away from it and move on to the next day. So we just need to show people what that looks like. Unfortunately, there are so many people in our community now that just cannot have respectful conversation, specifically around religion and politics.
Yep. And, another point that you raised that I so firmly believe in, which is don't ignore offensive or rude comments, that you got to deal with those head on. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, if we ignore it, we're still doing something. We're ignoring it. And it gives the impression that we are in agreement with it or okay with the statement that has been made. The other thing that's important to remember about that is when we ignore rude comments, we are saying to the team members that were perhaps offended that we don't care. And is that truly the message that we want to send to our people? The work that we do at HR TailorMade, as I said, is all about the culture that we want to build. And HR plays a huge role in that. And so if HR people ignore rude and offensive comments, we're really saying we really don't care and there's nothing you can do about it. And so as the leaders of organizations, we too play the primary role in making sure that people understand how to show up at work.
So true. So true. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on holding individual discussion with employees.
Yeah. So if you know that a team member has had a conversation or made some inappropriate comments, you want to talk to them individually. And you don't want to make the situation worse by having a conversation in a large group if you can avoid it. So you want to pull them aside and have a conversation. And it's as simple as this. Your comments were rude and disrespectful. And that is not the way that we behave. And you want to take it back to the values of the organization. We value collaboration. We value diversity. Whatever your values are, you want to make sure that the employee is always aligned with your values and sharing with them how their comments were offensive and very much in opposition to the culture that you're creating and the values that you've established within the organization.
That's so true. And it's one of the points that I always bring up in discussions with entrepreneurs about business. And it's crucial that you have core values and beliefs that are clearly established. And you don't need a laundry list of 10. What are the 3 to 4 to 5 core values that you're going to make decisions on? You're going to make disciplinary decisions on, you're going to make hiring decisions on, you're going to make firing decisions on. So that's so true.
Yeah.
And the last point in your article that I'd like to cover is, you talk about seek to gain perspective. Tell me about that.
So sometimes that's difficult, right? When you don't agree with something someone says, and it's offensive to you, it's hard sometimes to even want to understand their perspective. But in the workspace and in the spirit of respect, I think we need to do that. If we start our conversations with seeking to understand their perspective, I think it helps to take their guard down and it helps to soften our stance just a bit so that we can connect with that person. At the end of the day, the person that has made these comments or that has done these offensive things, they're still on your team.
Man.
So if they're going to remain on your team, you have to make sure that you understand where that person is coming from. That does not mean that you have to agree with them, but we have to exist in this space together. We have to create amazing things together. So understanding where they're coming from and having them experience you really, truly giving them time and space is a gift. And again, you don't have to walk away agreeing with that person.
That's right.
Yes.
Right. So let's take it to a different category of employee and talk about the leadership issue. So what if we have leaders in a company that want to be vocal about some controversial perspectives and points? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I say you deal with it the exact same way. I think too that the owner or the president or the CEO of the organization has a decision to make. Does this person truly align with the values, mission, and goals of our organization? One of the things that I've seen in corporate too many times is that the mean people stay along longer than the nice people who are, really trying to get things done. But the people who are mean, that are actually able to get the work done and are high performers, perhaps, they impact the culture far greater than the individuals who are maybe not the best performers, but are all about helping others perform well and wanting the organization to do well. So when we keep those bad actors, we are hurting our culture, we're hurting our organization because we'll start to see turnover. So if we start looking at what turnover looks like by leader, we'll see that person that is outspoken and is not nice and is rude and is mean to people, their turnover is higher than in other areas.
Yep. So we could have a company that's got great internal culture, no issues. Everybody knows how to communicate and have good conversations. But the world in which we live in, that we've got this social environment that surrounds us. How can, company leadership help their employees deal with these issues? Because the employees are going to feel the pressure from just even having a TV on maybe, or, protesters or different things like that, intimidation that comes from customers.
Yes.
What do you recommend there?
I recommend that you talk about it. I recommend that you give space to people to really bring their full selves to work, because I remember doing the George Floyd protest during COVID. There were so many organizations and people reaching out saying, how do we handle this? Just talk about it. If you truly care about the people in your space, it's not something that just happens to George Floyd didn't just happen to Black America. It happened to all of America. And there were so many people, no matter race or, religion, and so many people were impacted by it. So a lot of organizations created space for people to talk about it. And if you already have a respectful and warm and accepting community within your organization, that will be welcomed and embraced. And people are grateful to have an opportunity to fully be themselves at work, because there's no way that you can walk through a protest, sit at your desk, and not take it in somehow. So talking about it, creating opportunities for people to really connect with each other on a human level, I think is the best way to handle those conversations.
Yeah. So do you see differences in the way large organizations and smaller businesses are handling these issues? Because some of the issues are the same, but do organizations handle them differently because of their size?
I wouldn't say that they handle them differently because of their size. No, I wouldn't. I would say that they handle them differently because of the leadership.
You will.
So it depends on what the leadership, their comfort level is with addressing things like this in a small or large organization. So at the end of the day, we all are better together. And in order to be together, we have to respect each other.
Yeah.
And we have to create space for people to just be themselves.
Yeah. So where our country sits today and going forward, what do you think companies are going to do in different designs and how we advance culture in the future? Do you think the experiences we're facing as a country today are going to impact these decisions tomorrow?
Absolutely. I think that there are some really significant changes that have happened just this year alone, from the Supreme Court decisions to the state level decisions that are being made, to the decisions that are being made by the Florida governor, how that is, creating a ripple effect across the country. Right, wrong, or indifferent, good or bad, all of these things are impacting us across the nation, and they will continue to shape the way that we do business. I truly believe that because of all of these changes, so many people are starting their own businesses because they don't want to be a part of some of these atrocities that I believe are atrocities that are happening. That's what I think.
So true. So, Dr. Tiffany, we're about reached the end of our conversation today. But before we sign off, I'd like to ask you a question that I ask every guest, which is, if S2 Verify were to conduct a background check on you, would there be any surprises?
Probably would not be any surprises. I am as basic as they come.
Well, I understand that. I kind of feel I'm the same way.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today and for getting into these very sensitive conversations that I think all businesses have to have. And where can our audience connect with you and HR TailorMade?
Well, I would love for your audience to connect with us on social media, on LinkedIn, and on our website at hrtailormade.com.
Well, that's fabulous. So now I'd like to take a minute with my partners, Bill and Jim at S2 Verify. I know for a fact that many of our clients come to us and they need help in defining that scope.
Yep.
And I know it's hard to say that there's one shoe that fits everybody, but if we were to offer up a framework of a scope, and Jim, I'd like you to take this question first. If we were to offer up a medium level scope, what would that look like for our client?
The gold standard, I'm going to use that term carefully, in the industry historically has been this 7-year background. But we talk to clients in detail about, what is the scope you want? Well, I want 7 years. Then I will continually tell them, then we're going to search for 10. Because I don't want that case that lies in year 8 that might have fallen over, not to be missed, etc. But historically, Arnette, we will focus on a 10-year search, right? Because most focus at 7. We will focus on a precise look at what are you interested in? Felonies, misdemeanors, violent crimes. In other words, really boring in on what are you looking for and covering the scope of the criminal box very diligently. Federal records, county records, statewide searches, then pushing out a bit to determine, do you need verifications? Do you need to verify employment? Do you need to verify education? Are we involved in drug testing? But we really don't, we try to always go, what are you doing? And then we take what they're doing and walk back at that with, let's talk about what a standard would look like. So at least if you choose to keep doing what you're doing, you know what you're walking against. So again, that framework of a 10-year background encompassing the address history for that time frame for criminal is kind of the key component for us.
Yeah. Bill, how about your thoughts on that topic?
Typically, most companies run a 7-year all-county criminal, national crim file, past address history. Depending on, some use do drug testing, some don't nowadays. But, that's kind of your base package is a 7-year all-county. But, to Jim's point, depending on what job they're hiring for, if they're hiring for financial, individuals, they need to do a federal, and so you need to add different packages. So really it's a consultative sell where we have to find out what they're looking for, what different jobs they're hiring within their company. Then we can build a package based on, those specific jobs. But Jim hit it right on the head. So
Please tune in next week when we continue our conversation about the trends, challenges, and solutions in HR. We'll see you then. And it goes without saying, let's get America back to work, because dreams only work if we do. Dr. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Thank you.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.